Alright, it's mate redacted. The weight system in Skyrim is a bit of a mystery. This massive gold ingot weighs 1 of Skyrim's weight, and yet 10 of these tomatoes weighs the same. How can this be? Does the Skyrim weight system actually mean anything? Or is it just complete nonsense? Today, we're going to do some thorough research and find out. From the last episode, we suspected that 4.5 of the Skyrim weight was meant to be either half a pound or 500 grams. They're about the same thing. And when you do the maths on this, the 1 Skyrim weight equals about 111 grams. So we're saying that that gold ingot is about 111 grams. Now I've done some research online. I've looked at images and the dimensions of 100 gram gold ingots, and I have to say that this gold ingot definitely is heavier than 100 grams or 111 grams. So let's start off the video where we basically left off last time and try and work out how much this gold ingot is meant to weigh if it was in the real world. So assuming the ingot is pure gold, we know the density of pure gold is 19.32 grams per square centimetre. So if we get the length, breadth and height of this ingot, then we'll be able to work out how heavy it would be in the real world. Simple. All good so far. So I started off by googling how to measure length in Skyrim because I thought maybe someone had some sort of standard thing that we could measure against, and I got this answer. In Tamriel, the length is commonly measured in pertons and mass is measured in ingots. What the fuck does that even mean? I don't know. I've never heard the word pertons or the word ingots. I'm not even sure if I'm saying that right actually. If you've heard these words used by any of the NPCs in the game, that's great, but I certainly haven't. After a bit more googling, trying to find length, breadth and height, there was a command which is get distance player, and I tried to use this to stand in one ingot and measure the length to another ingot, but I just kept kicking the ingots, and then even when it did work it gave me a number which didn't really mean anything. I think it was like triangles or polygons or something like that, but that's not really helpful to us right now, so we're gonna have to get creative here. The average male imperial is 5 foot 10 inches or 178 centimeters tall. So if we stack the ingots on top of one and each other, we can try and work out how many ingots it takes to be the same size as the 5 foot 10 Imperial. I usually use Jackp0t in this game or Nord, so I needed to start a whole new save file for this, and you wouldn't believe it, it takes 7 fucking minutes before you can even control your character. Honestly, hearing you're finally awake again made me want to give a blowjob to a fucking revolver, but that's neither here or there for this video. But after playing through the start of the game, we can see that with this image, that the Imperial is roughly 21 ingots tall. And when we do the math, this means that every ingot is about 8.5 centimeters tall. Since we can't stack the ingot on its length or on its breadth, we're going to have to use ratios to estimate the size and kind of just count pixels. I used aspirate for this, and it did take me a long time, but to cut the long and the short of it, the length of the ingot is around 37.26 centimeters, the breadth of it is 14.9, and the height, as we previously mentioned, is 8.5 centimeters. Now if we times these out with the formula volume equals length times breadth times height, that gives us a volume of 4,718.979 centimeters cubed. And as we mentioned before, the density of pure gold is 19.32 grams per centimeter cubed. And if we times these two numbers, we get an insane weight of 91.171 kilograms. Now, I didn't really believe these numbers when I first heard them either, to be honest. But then when I was looking at dimensions of gold, it turns out that the gold ingot in Skyrim really would be 91 kilograms if it existed in real life. Gold is really just that dense. I do understand that some of my maths may have been a bit wrong because of the sides are slanted on the ingot, but honestly that would probably take off at most 10 or 15 kilograms and you're still left with a 80 kilogram ingot in your pocket. So maybe the team at Skyrim just aren't that nuts about gold and gold's an outlier or something like that. So let's have a look at some other objects in the game. Going back to food. The average tomato weighs 120 grams according to the USDA. This obviously when you're using to 1 decimal place is 0.1. So could the Skyrim weight unit really be kilograms? Could Bethesda be metric? Let's look at some further evidence and find out. I feel like in my last video I used food as quite a big crutch for that, so let's move on to something which is not a crutch. The iron sword. In Skyrim, the iron sword weighs 9 of the weight units. So if we're assuming that's 9 kilograms, that is 3 times heavier than what an iron sword would typically weigh in the real world. In the real world, a sword weighs about 2 or 3 kilograms. I know 9 kilograms or 18 pounds around what it is in American doesn't really sound that heavy, but when you're carrying that thing around all day, swinging it over and over again up around your head, it is really horrifically heavy. A sword cannot be 9 kilograms, so obviously the Skyrim system cannot be metric when it has the tomato at 0.1 and the sword at 9. That just doesn't work. I suppose if the sword's weight was in pounds, it would be closer to what we expect in real life. But then again, if we look at the tomato's weight in pounds, 0.1, that's like 45 grams, which is actually pretty tiny for a tomato. I think it would need to maybe be a baby tomato for that, and if you look at the model of it in game, it certainly is not a baby tomato. So now we have come across 3 distinct items: an ingot, a food, and a weapon, which are all distinctly on seemingly different weight systems. So there is no consistency between the weights of the Skyrim items when compared to the real world. I think that the Skyrim weight system is arbitrary. So instead of telling us how much weight the item actually is, it tells us how encumbered by the item the player is. So the gold ingot only encumbers the player by 1 because, well, the developer doesn't understand how heavy it is. He probably thinks it's just a couple of pounds or a couple of kilograms, but it's nice and square, it's easy to carry around. The tomato is very easy to carry around, it's small and it's light, but the sword, it's long, and although it's meant to be quite light at 3 to 4 kilograms or 2 to 3 kilograms, you can't really store that away easily, you know, so that gives it a higher value. So instead of the Skyrim system being about weight, it's about storage and how easy it is for the player to carry. The Skyrim weight system is almost meaningless apart from this. I cannot make heads or tails of the system if it is at weights. I've looked at so many items and I don't want to just have an hour-long episode of me running through items and being like, that's not consistent with what we saw before, because honestly I could, but I'm not going to. The Skyrim weight system is almost meaningless, it's arbitrary. It tells you how easy it is to carry the item, and that is the shocking truth about the Skyrim weight system. I think I'm going to cut it off there. Please comment, rate and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.